Hey, it's me, Vicky Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in this crazy world. Listen, so I've just come on briefly. I want to tell you, we're following the John George case, of course. I did a video earlier today to explain a little bit about the latest developments. Um, can you keep up with it? I mean, it's just one thing after another. But anyway, just after I finished that live, then later on today, some more information came out that I want to tell you about. So just let's go back. John George. I'm not going to go through the whole scenario, but just that John George, of course, was the Belfast father of two boys that was murdered. And then there was this speculation. There are two suspects, or there were two suspects in the murder of John George. Both of which eventually were out on bail. I must try and remember to link the playlist to this video because there's so much to tell you. I'm not going to go through it all in this video. I have to presume that you know more or less what's happening in the John George case. But yeah, two suspects in the murder of John George, one of which, both of which were on bail eventually, and one of which was actually murdered himself a couple of weeks ago in Rocío del Mar, which is a beautiful area of Spain, beach area. And he was found shot himself, and there was this like, well, who shot him? Is it connected with the John George case, or is it completely unrelated to the John George case? Lots of rumors flying around about Michael Maly, the guy. you know, you know, is he? You've got his dad saying that he's not as bad as people make him out to be. That in fact he's he was killed to silence him. But of course, a dad would say that, wouldn't they? A dad would not want to admit that their son was a bad person. I'm just looking for a photo now to put up of Michael. Then, of course, you've got other people saying that, yeah, he was a bad person. He was involved heavily in the drug scene. He boasted about killing people before. Now, I want to put up this picture. It is on the article that we're going to look at. But this is Michael. This is his daughter. So Michael is now dead, and his daughter, he's Czechoslovakian national. He was 32, I think. So this is a tragedy as well. Maybe he is a bad man. Thing is, it's always a tragedy when there's a child left behind who has to live with that legacy. The child hasn't done anything wrong. Same with John George. Didn't live the perfect life, though. There's nothing to say that he wasn't a killer, but he got involved with things he shouldn't have got involved with. But he had two young lads. It's not their fault, is it? It's not the family's fault. So, as I was saying in the video that I released earlier, the live stream that I did, I just think this is a tragedy for everybody that's involved. Even Johnny Smith, he's young, his family, what they're going through. Then you've got Madison Allen, his wife, or Madison Smith now, I suppose. They're all, they've all got big charges against them. They're getting into trouble left, right, and centre. But they're all people with families. They're all human beings. And I think the tragedy for me in this case is just the whole thing is a complete mess and scary and violent and just horrible, isn't it? The whole thing. The whole case from started with John George's case, but now, of course, other people have been hurt or killed. Michael's been killed, shot, and then of course there's Madison had the car accident, and there's a guy who's completely unrelated to anything. 52-year-old man was killed in that car that she ran into. That's another sort of body left by the wayside. Then you've got Dan McMeekin, who was stabbed in the neck and left for dead. It's just, it really is a story of violence, of, just carnage really being left behind. And the people that will suffer are the families. You look at Michael there with his daughter. Just think, is any sort of dad taking his daughter to a skating rink, smiling, and all the while, was he already a killer when that photo was taken? Had he killed someone else, as some people say he'd boasted of? Did he kill John George, or did Johnny Smith kill John George, or were they all in on it together? So it's we just don't know, do we? The full circumstances. Anyway, that case of the murder of John, will be coming up probably sometime this year, but we don't know again. So I just wanted to, so the news has come out, some news has come out, this is how fast this case moves. There's always something coming out. I can't keep up with it. It's, so apparently, so there was some speculation that the person that had killed Michael Maly was some Liverpudlian gang member, hitman. There was talk about that early on. But now it turns out that no, it was not the Liverpudlian guy. It was a Mancunian from my neck of the woods, from Manchester. And not only that, apparently he was arrested wearing a Manchester City shirt, which, of course, is my team. I mean, just like, oh my God. So anyway, according to Jorge Verdu, is a Spanish journalist, and he's speaking here on the Facebook page, or one of the Facebook pages for Justice for John George. And he says, Michael Maly's killer is a 40-year-old man from Manchester. A 40-year-old man, British man, has been arrested as the main suspect in the murder of Michael Maly, the 33-year-old Czechoslovakian man, shot dead on March the 1st in Torrevieja as he was about to board a flight to flee the country. Now, that wasn't Michael who was about to flee the country. Michael was on bail. He had been cooperating with the police, people say, but again, we don't know for certain because the police, of course, are very secretive about the whole case. Was it Michael who led the Guardia Civil to John's body? Would John's body have ever been found if it wasn't for Michael Maly saying where he was? I mean, the thing is, the family were all looking in the wrong place because they've been given the wrong information. They were led on a complete wild goose chase. Anyway, the upshot was John George was found. Whether Michael had any hand in that or not, I don't know. So this suspect, and don't forget, he is a suspect. Everyone's innocent till proven guilty. He was arrested by the Guardia Civil last week, as reported by El Español of Alicante. That's an Alicantino newspaper. So agents apparently intercepted him in the parking lot of the Region of Murcia International Airport. That's Corvera Airport. If you live in Spain, you probably know of it. And he is currently in judicial custody, according to the Guardia Civil. And inside the trunk of his car, apparently, allegedly, investigators found several suitcases, clothing, and his passport, reinforcing suspicions of a possible escape attempt. Well, if he was at the airport, he's likely he was about to leave. They also, so a few days after the crime, investigators focused their suspicions on a resident of Torre Pacheco, originally from Manchester. Torre Pacheco is in the Murcia region. Now, the thing is, Murcia, Alicante, a lot of you probably know Alicante, whether you live in Spain or not. Alicante, if you fly to Spain to go to Benidorm, to go to Torrevieja, to go to Orihuela Costa, all those popular places with expats for holidays, etc., or holiday homes, you will probably fly to Alicante Airport. But not far away is Murcia Airport, which is now it's moved over. You know, the last couple of years it used to be a tiny airport. Now it's a bigger airport. It's called Corvera in Murcia, which is the next province along. So Alicante finishes and Murcia begins. Torre Pacheco is I don't know if you'd call it a village exactly. It's not a massive place, but maybe not small enough to be a village. But it's a place where a lot of expats live over the border there in Murcia, and yeah, it's popular with expats. It's not near the beach though. So the thing about Murcia is a lot of people buy properties in Murcia because they're cheaper, because they're inland. So you go in, like, you know, if you in Alicante and you go on the coastal areas, they're the more expensive areas, obviously, to live. The nearer you are to the beach, the more you pay for your property. But if you go inland, you can get real bargains in Torre Pacheco and those kind of areas, really big properties with land for half the price, or certainly 2/3 of the price that you would pay for the similar property in Alicante or on the coast. So that's why it's quite popular, Murcia, with expats for the value for money that you get for what you're buying. So yeah, apparently this guy was from Torre Pacheco, or was a resident of Torre Pacheco. But he's originally from Manchester, and he was actually arrested wearing a Manchester City shirt, apparently. So he's got a criminal record for assault and an offence related to illegal possession of firearms. Both of those offences were committed in 2024. Anyway, then we've got that picture that I showed you of Michael Maly with his daughter. And apparently, now I didn't know these details. So it says here that he's a Czech ex-wrestler silenced by gunfire in Torrevieja to cover up another crime. And apparently it was said he was afraid of the Irish mafia, but he's not been killed by the Irish mafia. According to the police, he's been killed by the Manchester mafia. So he was shot in the Temple around 1 a.m. and he was found by a couple of tourists who were walking their dog on Rocio del Mar Beach, and they found him with a gunshot wound to the head. Well, I heard he had more than one wound to the head, but I don't know. This is what it's saying in this article. And apparently he was still alive at the time, according to this article, and he was taken to the Torrevieja University Hospital, where he later died, sadly. So, yeah, the arrested man was wearing a Manchester City shirt and swim trunks when he was arrested at the time of the crime, and was detained by the homicide team of the organic unit of the judicial police of the Civil Guard in Alicante after a 2-week investigation in which several suspects were questioned. Now, that sounds a bit like word salad, doesn't it? But this article has obviously been translated from the Spanish articles, so it does sound a bit strange, some of it. On the day of his arrest, officers seized a vehicle linked to the crime in the town of La Nucia. Now, La Nucia is nowhere near Murcia or Torre Pacheco. La Nucia is near Benidorm. It's not far away from Benidorm. and apparently he's been brought before the duty court of Murcia, which has ordered his imprisonment. So he's not been given bail. But of course, don't forget, this is the surprise to all of us, that Johnny Smith is still out on bail, even though he's he's just recently been arrested for possession of weapons, etc. So it's very strange that Johnny is still out on bail, and Madison Smith, or Madison Allen, his wife, as well. It seems like whatever they do, they just get released. So it makes you wonder what the reason for that is. Anyway, the investigating section of the Court of First Instance Plaza 2 in Torrevieja is the competent body that has taken charge of the investigation, declaring the proceedings secret. So this is what they do. The judge decides. This happens with most serious crimes, to be honest. I don't even remember when I went to Madrid and was trying to find out something about Anna Knežević, who disappeared there. That case was made secret. And the thing is, it's almost like, to explain it, if the proceedings are made secret, the judge decides to make the proceedings secret. That is exactly what it says on the tin. They're not even really supposed to tell. It's so secret. They're not even really supposed to tell you that the proceedings are secret. This is how it works in Spain. It's there's no transparency as far as court proceedings are concerned. And that is very frustrating for families, of course. All families. It's not a discrimination against foreigners. It's the same for Spanish people. It's just the way it is. That's the way the Spanish judicial system works. So I'm surprised that we've had this information, really, enough information that we know he's from Manchester. We know he was wearing a Manchester City shirt, etc. Seems like he was from Torre Pacheco, but what the connection is in La Nucia, I don't know. This could be a gang, there could be, because it did say in that article that they'd interviewed several people. A 2-week investigation, it says. Several suspects questioned. So, no, of course it's possible, because if Michael was involved in the drug scene or gangland crime in general, it may be that his murder was nothing to do with the John George case. Because it's easy to assume that because he was, waiting for this trial about the murder of John George, we assume that he was killed because of that. But of course, it might not have been. It could be completely unrelated. This is a complete mess, this case. It's horrible. It's just one tragedy after another. And it just makes you realize, why they call Spain Costa del Crime, or the Costa del Crime. It makes you realize why, because it's not just the Alicante area. It's the same. You go to Marbella, or anywhere where there's a lot of expats. Because sadly, most of these type of crimes are committed by not just British people, Irish people. There's Eastern Europeans. There's every nationality you can imagine. Everybody wants to go and live in Spain for various reasons. Unfortunately, they do go and commit their crimes. A lot of crimes are caused by foreigners in whatever country you're in, because they don't have the same... I don't know, I suppose there's something about the way drugs are trafficked through Spain, I suppose, on their way to other places. you know, maybe that's why Spain is a hotbed for sort of drug crime, etc. And drug crime always brings violence, doesn't it? And gangs, etc. So it's all going on in the background while at the same time, you know, people are coming out on holiday with families and having a great time and thinking it's all great and safe and this, that, and the other. And it is probably safe if you're not involved in the gangs, etc. But it wasn't very safe for John George, and it's not been safe for Michael Maly, who, you know, and the poor guy that Madison killed by accident in the road accident. You know, it's you know, thing is, things can happen wherever you are. So it's important to keep your wits about you. And I think the whole lesson of this whole thing is to young people, if young people probably not watching my channel, but people who have, you know, who know young people will be, just once you get involved in these gangs, you cannot, it's hard to escape as well, you know. And as I was saying in the video that I put out earlier, that's why I always feel a bit sorry for Madison, because she was only 19 when it all sort of got going, and young people do silly things and they get involved in things, and sometimes you just can't get out of it. You know, you get involved in these sort of scenarios, you can't get out of it. And maybe that was the same for Michael Maly. You know, his dad talks. Thing is, their families always speak highly of them because they don't want to believe that their child is their adult child, no matter how old they get. I mean, Michael Maly, 33, and his dad's out there speaking about him. John George in his late 30s, but his family still loved him. You know, even though he's involved in, he got involved. There's no, you know, I'm not, John George didn't murder anybody, but he got involved with the wrong people. And the problem is, sometimes you get into these situations and you just can't get out of them. And, you know, then bad things happen, don't they? So, yeah, this case, or the tentacles, if you like, that are coming out from this case started with John George, of course, and the sad murder of John. My heart breaks for his family. But, you know, my heart breaks for this little girl as well. That's her dad, you know, Michael Maly, and for his dad. Michael Maly was his son. And, you know, these are hard, what's the word? These are hard circles to move in. You know, they don't have a respect for life, sadly. It's very sad. The whole thing is very sad. Anyway, so the man who allegedly has killed Michael Maly, there he is. He's in prison now. How long will he be in prison for? Johnny Smith wasn't in prison for very long. Now, Michael Maly wasn't in prison at all. He was bailed immediately. But I tell you what, he probably would have been safer if he wouldn't have been bailed. You know, that's the thing. When you were out there walking free, not only the police will be following Johnny and Madison around, but who else? You know, maybe the police is there for their protection. I don't know. They probably need a bit of protection. It's not a nice way to live your life, is it? Always looking over your shoulder either, and not knowing what's going to happen next. And I just can't believe that when they were arrested, they had weapons on them. You know, they had weapons, and they're still not been imprisoned. Surely they've broke the conditions of their bail by having weapons. Questioned for 2 days and then released again. You know, what have they got to do to have their bail rescinded? You know, would they be safer if they did have their bail rescinded? I don't know. Don't know how safe Spanish prisons are. You know, are you likely to go into prison, then somebody can still get you in prison? You know, I don't know. So Anyway, I said I would come back if there were any news, and that is the news. So the guy that's been arrested for Michael Maly's murder is a Mancunian, 40 years old, arrested at Corvera Airport in Murcia, a resident from Torre Pacheco, but originally from Manchester. And yeah, I think the car's been seized, property searched in Lanuthia, which is nowhere near Murcia. Lanuthia is more nearer to Benidorm, just outside Benidorm. But that's where all these connections go, I suppose. So that's the situation so far. Who knows what's going to happen next in this case? You just get the feeling that it's not a case that's, just going to get resolved quietly, with the trial, etc. You just get the feeling that there's more to come. Maybe even more tragedy to come in this case, which is very sad. But anyway, thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave your fingerprint on the like button, your DNA on the subscribe button. Completely free ways you can support my channel. And I appreciate each and every one of you for all the support you give me. So thank you. I'll see you really soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. Bye.